very short. I was asked last night by Catalina how we met. It's a good story. This was in Groningen at a blockchain conference, and she was giving a talk, and I was passing by, and I thought, who is this person giving such a good talk? And then I think I eventually came your way, and I was like, I need to know this person. And we became friends after that. Big inspiration also for getting in the RC and showing the way. So very happy to have you. Yeah, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so very much, Thibault, and it's really such a privilege to be here and to test some of my new ideas on you, if I may. So you are perhaps indirectly also acting as my focus group.
Thank you so very much for your kind invitation. It's such a pleasure to finally meet some of you in person. Really, really happy about that. And what I'm going to talk to you about in the next 30 minutes and then perhaps have a very, very vivid conversation about is children and their activity online. But not in any way, because of course this is going to be a very big topic and probably, and not just probably, but certainly some of you are actually doing research on that and know the field already very well. But I want to focus on this idea of the fact that children, although they are right now at the heart of some very, very, very intense public debates, there is one thing missing from these debates, the fact that they are also consumers online. And so I want to take you on this journey of discovering with me what exactly that means and how we can integrate this missing part of the conversation in there. As I was mentioning, everyone is talking about children. Maybe you recognize this still from a 1999 alternative rock video by the band The Offspring with the song "The Kids Aren't Alright." And I think that this is a mantra right now that we see in every single news item, in every single LinkedIn post, if you are on LinkedIn, and if you can withstand being on LinkedIn, in any kind of blue sky Twitter discussion about what are we gonna do with the youth? They are at risk of being on social media. And judging by some of your reactions, you're either familiar with this debate, you might be very sarcastic about it, which I really would love to hear about more later on. But basically, this is a debate that is happening right now, and it is very, very intense. So what I want to do is, first and foremost, I want to give you some overview about children on the internet right now, and also their role as consumers, especially in the context of content monetization, because this is what we have been doing research on in my ERC starting grant, Human Ads. We have been looking at social media content monetization. So I will specifically be referring to social media business models mostly, but you can, and we can discuss later on to what extent these kind of business models are transferable or similar also in other areas of the internet, such as, for instance, gaming. And then the question that I would like to kind of launch here and test with a couple of examples that are completely just underbaked right now. The question of how can we really empower children as consumers. So we have a very, very lengthy history of consumer protection in the European Union, more specifically almost 60 years of regulation on consumer law. It gives us so many rights, but as adult consumers, and right now none of this regulation actually focuses on the rights of children from the perspective of the children, but rather on some very specific aspects of how to paternalistically protect them in a top-down way. So the question that I want to pose is...
ask questions, or do you want to...
Perhaps we can leave the questions at the end. Yeah.
Do you need a clicker? That's one question.
No, it's good. I'm good with this. Yes. So let's talk a little bit about children as consumers on the internet. Again, this is something that is incredibly important in so many different jurisdictions. We have seen the discussions around the social media bans. In the European Union, there is this even this special panel on online child safety. So online child safety, we could safely say that it is one of the biggest public debates that is happening even at European level as we speak. So let's have a little bit of an overview of this debate, right? So basically there are so many different voices saying, okay, we have a problem on the internet with children. And there is the social science kind of background, which I have familiarized myself with, but this is also not my field. I'm a consumer scholar, not a behavioral scientist. But what I can tell is that there are two very specific kind of camps. Of course, we have the hate school, the author of The Anxious Generation, who's really saying, okay, we have so much research showing that children are on their screens at school, at home. Screens are replacing a lot of socialization, and it's bad. It's really, we are destroying children with screens and social media. Children are absolutely being harmed by these developments. And then we have the Przybylski opposition. So that's basically a professor from Cambridge University who has been very vehemently denying, very loudly and publicly, that these effects exist. He's saying there is no causal evidence in any of the studies that Haidt is mentioning, also because this field is very often based on a lot of subjective research, if you want to put it like that. Maybe it's a very loaded term to call it subjective, but for instance, diaries, right? So that you would go and you would ask children to write in diaries how they feel about social media at different times of day. So it's very much based on perception. So then the question is, how can we really make come to like a public policy causal link type of finding if there are certain weaknesses in the methods that we use to study that. There are a lot of other scholars, and there have been also different ERC projects on these particular aspects. So for instance, the entire online-offline disconnect, that was Marik van der Abele at the Ghent University and Laura van den Bossen at Leuven University, KU Leuven. They have been looking at social media and wellness and the well-being of children. And they have been looking in different spaces, with school, like technology in schools, but also on gaming websites and also social media itself. There's also Patty Valkenburg from the University of Amsterdam, who has been doing, I think for decades, this type of very, very long, kind of longitudinal studies, just like Sonia Livingstone from LSE, on basically what happens to children when they use technology. Does this really affect their well-being? And the long story short is that it's a very complicated behavioral landscape, because it's very difficult to really identify what actual factors are going to hold for all children, that there's going to be a harm for all children, whereas there are so many different variables at stake here. How much time you're spending on these devices and these environments, but also how you feel at different times in the day might not be the same. It depends on how you use them as well. Character traits are also very important. The control that parents exercise over these technologies is also important. If you're under any kind of peer pressure or peer control, your degree of independence. There's also a lot of pediatric research that is looking at some correlations, for instance, saying that maybe mental health issues might be somehow associated with social media, but they might actually stem from the fact that children feel that they're not independent anymore, so they are suffering for other reasons. But then we also have some more, kind of traditional variables, such as the actual income of a household, the education level of a household, and all these kind of things. So as you can imagine, it's a very, very complex story to tell, that basically, as we see it also at the European Union level, to say all children under all circumstances at all times are being harmed by technology. This is not something that I'm going to study myself, because I don't have the tools or the expertise to contribute to this particular field of research. But one thing is for sure, there's very much polarization in this evidence that we see here. And the question, I think, for regulation is, how do we deal with polarized findings? Because these polarized communities, research communities, basically are going to do one thing. The person who goes on most talk shows, and I think so far Haidt has been really winning at this game, is going to maybe have a chance to do some degree of regulatory capture. And we have seen that this has been the case, for instance, with Australia and their social media ban. I think that the Minister of Media even went out, I saw this on TikTok, but went out and said, we are the first jurisdiction in the world to implement the findings of Jonathan Haidt, because we need to save the children. So a lot of people have been calling this also moral panic. And I've seen with my own eyes in different ERC events, even over dinners, even in informal settings that scientists just disagree, but disagree passionately. And I think that this is a little bit of a problem where, yeah, if you really want to look at the research and say, okay, we want to do evidence-based policymaking, it's kind of difficult right now to synthesize and summarize, on the one hand, what is happening in this very polarized field, but also to say, well, you know, we don't have a causal link right now, we can identify it, that means it doesn't exist. So that's also a risk that regulators right now need to take. Now, what I have been trying to kind of, how I have been trying to make this in my own narrative is that, okay, right now there's a very big discussion about children, but in a way, it kind of, I find it rather artificial because it departs from this idea that the internet is unsafe, right? But then when was the internet ever safe? And there are a lot of anecdotes, maybe you can remember yourselves how you have been using the internet in the early days. I mean, the internet used to be like a Wild West, and there's Jamie Bartlett, a journalist, a British journalist, who wrote a really cool book, also if you're into kind of vintage cyberspace, and as I'm sure Arno is, called The Dark Web. You know, I mean, before Polymarket, you had like assassination Polymarket, kind of, you know, bulletin boards, where people, if enough people would show up and say, yes, we should assassinate this person, then maybe someone from the group would actually try to undertake the actual assassination, right? So that's the internet as we know it. The internet has never been safe. However, what wasn't safe on the internet until recently has been this idea that, you know, there's a lot of criminal undertakings, right? So this is the assassination example. But at the same time, you could have, you know, a lot of child sexual assault materials. You had a lot of like drug dealings. We've done some research. We can talk over this about this over lunch. This is what I was presenting at the conference when I met Thibault on the dark web and dark web marketplaces. And what they were selling there. So yes, the internet is very, very problematic because of criminal activity, but increasingly what we see in our current contemporary iteration of the internet is that there are a lot of new problems that we can't really put our finger on because of the new monetization models of different companies that are partaking in the internet as we know it. And the best example that I can give you right now is this entire kind of wave of litigation that is coming from the United States, looking at product liability on social media, because I think that there has been this massive, that there has been an overwhelming approach to call, for instance, social media as a public square, but not necessarily to look at it as an actual product, and to ask questions such as, if you buy this computer or this phone or this stander, and you're buying this as a consumer, if it doesn't extend, it's a defect, there's a problem with the product. But what does that mean if the product is Facebook, right? So these kind of questions are only now emerging, like 20 years after these platforms have made their existence into kind of becoming very, very powerful on the internet. But more specifically, so if we look at monetization from a general perspective, I would say that's monetization means like how are people making money on the internet, and that also means how companies are making money. We can look at content monetization very primarily on social media, and we can see that it really is one of the driving forces affecting how children are relating to each other on the internet and why they're using the internet. And this remains quite generally understudied. There is a cluster of researchers, of communication researchers, such as Lieselot Hudders, who also has a consolidator in Ghent, at Ghent University, called Kidfluencer. And basically she's looking at also how children can be a force of good and how they can educate other children because of the fact that they actually are influencers. So that's very, very exciting. But the thing is that content monetization in general remains a little bit detached from this idea of you know, the changing behavior of children, who in turn are going to participate in monetization in two ways. They either are products, so they can be products because they're commodified, and I'm going to give you some examples from some of the research that we've done, ethnographic research on TikTok. But at the same time, they are the audience that has given platforms attention. So in a way, they are also commodified by platforms, and not only by their parents in the case that they are actually participating in content creation and all sorts of business models in that respect. And at the same time, they are also themselves promoting things. So they are selling things, they're buying things, and perhaps you might remember that seeing this online or in the news, that all social media ban laws are going to have an additional and mirroring discussion, which is, let's do age verification. Mm-hmm. So you see, I'm just taking like the softest, the most vanilla topics that we can discuss about. Let's do age verification. And age verification is seen right now as this kind of like access discussion. So, okay, you access or you don't access social media. Whereas with content monetization, we can also ask the question of, well, let's say maybe you can access social media, but that doesn't mean that everything you access there is actually yours to take as a child, to engage in transactions and to consume as an actual consumer. And this is kind of just doing a little bit of a deep dive in the missing point here. At the same time, we see that looking at children as consumers, there's quite a lot of literature in marketing on this, and this is a very, very well cited study from the 90s. I believe it was from the 90s. That looks at 25 years of research on consumer socialization, and basically it's just about how children become consumers, how they develop the kind of barriers that are necessary to become pragmatic, to ask critical questions, and then when they see an ad, that they wouldn't say, yes, okay, I definitely immediately want to buy this product, but to be a little bit more pragmatic and think, okay, so they're trying to sell something to me. I need to ask some questions and realize that maybe some of the features that are being presented in this ad are not actually real. So there is some research here. And you can see that, for instance, in this type of research, in this overview, you can see the kind of skills and the kind of year boundaries or age boundaries and groups that the children have been clustered into. So if you have a perceptual stage, you can't really understand what's happening. You can't really understand and make sense of the kind of advertising that you watch. So you're not going to be able to understand if someone wants something from you. Maybe you get into this analytical stage when you're 7. When you start being 7, you kind of start understanding a little bit more of the features of advertising. So remember, this is research from marketing. And then you start becoming or coming into your consumer senses. You have your consumer perspectives later in your childhood life. Now, the question is this really holding on the current internet? There isn't really a lot of research that is being done on this. There are some communication researchers from Wageningen who are looking at consumer socialization, for instance, in the context of...
This from the 90s, right?
Yeah. So this is from the 90s. So this is basically the traditional, kind of the old school advertising, right? But then we have no idea how this fits right now to online advertising, to targeted advertising, and to the sandwich of manipulation that can exist when you have undisclosed influencer advertising being shown to you on a platform interface that can have some features that are supposed to deceive you even further. So it is problematic. We don't know how this is how this is going to apply. Especially if we look at the characteristics of children who are now consumers. And I have to share with you a lot of TikTok videos and a lot of TikTok evidence so that I can actually illustrate this better. Now, Gen Alpha, this is kind of these are the children that we can talk about more specifically as a generation. So born kind of around 2010. So born kind of at the same time as platforms, so we can put it like that, right? Are you older than Facebook or younger than Facebook? And so they have been also made into this generation that is just immediately using technology as of their infancy, right? So babies that are trying to swipe screens on papers because they have interacted with tablets and such things. But then also there have been some studies in their role of these children as, or Generation Alpha as consumers, like PricewaterhouseCoopers did a study last year showing that actually they drive decision making. So they will recognize products, they will recognize services so well that they're going to go to their parents, because this is also what the 90s article was telling us. You know, when children don't have the defenses of being very pragmatic, they're going to come to their parents and be like, I need this. And they're going to just pester the parent until the parent actually purchases the good for them. And then this is what we see that is happening right now as well, that children kind of act as the socialization agents of their parents, because they might understand certain pockets of the internet better. And then, for instance, if they go and they want to convince a parent to buy them a game, and the parent doesn't understand the game, then they will have some degree of influence over the parent. And why is this happening? So Lisa Hooders has been looking also at this concept of consumer socialization more recently. And basically, the way in which children become consumers and develop these skills is by having different socialization agents, so-called. So those are going to be first and foremost family, but also other types of education channels that will teach them, hey, listen, so this is a very, very colorful ad. It's just to make you buy things. But then how does that translate to a generation, for instance, like the millennials, the parents of Gen Alpha, or sometimes also Gen Z, the parents of Gen Alpha? How do we translate that to parents who do not really understand the complexity of the internet to such an extent to actually teach their children what to stay away from? My metaphor, the way I like to explain this, is that, you know, the people who are giving their data by playing Farmville on Facebook are supposed to teach children how to stay safe and protect their privacy online, right? So we have ourselves a little bit of a problem there. And of course there are exceptions. I'm sure that everyone here is really very developed in how you can be socialization agents for your potential children. But there are some issues there if we look at the broader scope. Now, let me explain to you very concretely what is actually happening on the internet and content monetization with children. So this is Salish. These are some screenshots taken from October. This is a US-based influencer. In October, she had around 3 million subscribers on YouTube. She also has probably more than 3 million right now on TikTok. This is her account, but all of the content is filmed by her father. That's weird. We're not going to go. That's a rabbit hole. It's a completely different discussion. The father has 30 million followers on his YouTube channel by going and filming his teenage daughter. I think she was 15 at this time, filming his teenage daughter, her boyfriend, and her friends, right? So exactly like Sylvia's like, yeah, exactly. That is the face that we should make when we hear that, because what is happening there, again, that's a different research question. This is the father here, you know, and he's filming beauty routines with, you know, his daughter and friend, right? So she, why is she filming this? Because she also launched her own beauty brand. And I want to show you what happened at her launching event that took place in a mall. So first of all, this is the excitement that a lot of different children users were expressing on TikTok because of the fact that they either were supposed to or had the chance to already meet Salish at this particular launch. I'm so excited. You know, this was a person who has maybe like 1,700 followers. Also children, and this is a very interesting thing. Children who are very young, they will be very careful how they're filming and how they're sharing things so that they don't get you know, flagged as an under 13 user in the US. These were some other people who were, so just Bailey, she's maybe, I think, like definitely under 8, an estimation, I don't know, maybe around 8 to 10. Emily, so you can see that Emily even has an entire link tree. These are all affiliate codes, so she's making money, and well, the family of Emily is making money if you use any kind of codes here to purchase products. And these were girls who participated in the launch of the beauty brand, okay? This is a random mall in the United States. I forgot even the name of the location, but let me try to. This is not a Beyonce concert. This is a 15-year-old influencer singing. This is Salish singing because she also needs to entertain her fans. But basically, this point of view pertains to a mother who took her child there. Yeah, I think
Is this in a mall?
Yeah, it's in a mall. Yeah. So I think we have heard enough. So basically, this is the point of view of a mother who took her child there, her 10-year-old daughter there. And the mother is also an aspiring influencer. And basically, the thing is that here you can look at this and you can see children, or you can look at this and see startups. You know, so that's pretty much monetization startups, right?
But also consumers.
And
It's
consumers.
an entire mall of course, obviously.
Or cattle?
Yeah, but these are very tiny and young consumers.
Yes. Now, I think that, let's see. So this is another, because the thing is that this is, of course, a US influencer, but this is a Romanian influencer. I am from Romania. This is a Romanian influencer who has been one of the biggest, she's from Moldova, but she's big also in Romania. And she has a camp. It costs around 1,000 euros to participate in her summer camp. So we're talking about really complex monetization strategies. Children who participate in this camp, they're filming and they're posting this, and that's why I was saying that. Of course, they are consumers, but they're also startups because they're launching their own careers here, right? So we see that this is a circle of monetization, which comes from the fact that, on the one hand, content monetization in some ways has democratized content production. So anybody can just take a phone and then start filming. Of course, you need to have that 1,000 euros and maybe even more money to be able to afford getting into the camp so that you can kickstart your career using this particular influencer. So that's why it's seemingly democratic. You still need a lot of money to make it. But at the end of the day, it's really affecting children. And Lieselotte Hudders herself has been doing quite a lot of interviews with children who are kind of aspiring influencers, and this is the aspiration dimension of content monetization, means that children want to partake in this economy. So this is Juliana Beregoy. This is just a toddler going to kindergarten and showing her get ready with me makeup routine, where she's known on the internet for using a lot of blush to go to kindergarten. Yeah? Okay. So now also if you look at YouTube, you can see that pretty much like a lot of the channels, so these are the most subscribed to channels on YouTube, and you can see, you know, Cocomelon is for children, Vlad and Nikki, child influencers, Kids Diana Show, child influencers. These are not children anymore, but kind of adolescents, influencers like Nastya, also child influencer. PewDiePie, until recently, was also filming his child. He was doing vlogs of his child, so you could also call PewDiePie a family channel. He used to be the most subscribed to YouTuber. So you can see that also just productions for children are very, very, very big on social media. This has led to this idea that children are being commodified also by their parents. We saw this example of the video of the mother filming her child, or filming the event that her child was attending. And together with Tom Devon and Taylor Annabelle, we wrote this paper that I can also share the link to in New Media Society, where we looked at TikTok and we looked at 3 different countries and how children are being monetized by their parents in 3 different countries. And we kind of identified that children can be used as props. This is actually a pasta ad video, right? So you're using your child to actually do a sponsored brand deal. But you're just pretty much just like hiring an actor. And then you can have children perform a much more central role in content production and content creation, so that you're going to follow your child around. A lot of family influencers do that. We have written an entire report that was also featured on Boos, an episode of Boos, if you're interested, about in the Bellinga's or other family vloggers in the Netherlands, where basically you're going to have a mother just chasing and looking and filming every single moment of the children's lives. and basically just making money out of this. Now, this is just what the new social media looks like, a concept that has now been also echoed in a lot of new paradigms, like post-social media, as some call it. But we don't just have social media as the networks anymore, the social networks, but we have the actual content creation, so the creation of content on demand, and the social commerce. And I say this with an emphasis on the fact that the Netherlands is going to welcome TikTok Shop very soon. So wait until... Sorry?
What did you say?
TikTok Shop. The Netherlands. So TikTok Shop is going to also be available in the Netherlands very soon. It is. It has already been available in some European countries, and
What
it's
is
going
that?
to. TikTok Shop is basically you open your TikTok, and instead of going on bol.com, you just watch a video where an influencer is promoting a product. You click on the link in the description, and you can buy the product on the platform. It is a seamless interaction that takes you from an ad to a purchase in literally just two taps. Yeah, and that is, we can also discuss this perhaps in the Q&As. But to kind of go into the conclusion, I have a lot of other things here, but let me just try to conclude and maybe use some of the slides in the discussion. Basically, as we see, there's a lot of content monetization on social media. Children are participating in a lot of transactions. Initially, we could consider that, a child making an account on TikTok, that's one contract. But right now, they can do micropayments, which I'm gonna maybe show you in the Q&A. They can buy things on TikTok Shop. So what are we gonna do with understanding what kind of legal capacity children have, and what does that mean for their role of consumers? And I think for me, the most important question that I would like to also kind of brainstorm with you on, we have all of these consumer rights. So for instance, we have rights of withdrawal. We have the right to withdraw even from some online, like for instance, like digital subscriptions, which we know from empirical data, for example, from Ofcom, that children who make micropayments or engage in subscriptions online, they regret that, like a very large chunk of them. So imagine if they knew how to actually just withdraw from that contract, and then they would be seen as a consumer capable of doing that. We also see that in other regulation, not consumer law, like the Digital Services Act, Article 28 is again very paternalistic and very much like we need to protect children. Protecting children generally means we need to keep them off certain places, or like just make sure that we enclose them and we don't allow them to go into certain places. But at the same time, the guidelines explaining the implementation of Article 28 are very much going into the direction of, okay, but even the notice and action right in the DSA, if you see content online that is harmful for children and you're a child and you have the right to be on social media, it should be easier for you to actually report that. Because we know that there's case law, even from Bamberg, so national case law, that the TikTok notice and action system, particularly to report illegal content, is very, very cumbersome. So if you have a 15-year-old who really wants to report, an illegal ad, it's gonna be even more difficult for that 15-year-old, in theory, than for an average consumer, whoever that average consumer is, but definitely not a child, to do that reporting. So for me, the question is, would it make sense to have these kind of very specific rights that focus on children? And if so, how should they look like? Do we want to have very specific terms of service for children in the situation that they have the right to participate in certain platforms, in certain services? So that's even leaving aside the entire national contract law discussion of legal capacity that we can return to in the Q&A. And also, for instance, reporting mechanisms, would that be also an example of just empowering children to participate in these spaces? Sandra Cortesi and Urs Gasser, and this is going to be my concluding remark, have been writing things that also Dana Boyd and Robin Kaplan have been repeating for a very long time, that the success of understanding how to deal with social media and children is not going to come from prohibitions, but it's going to come from the integration of children in these spaces, making the spaces safer to a certain extent with prohibitions, but then also facilitating the participation of children to these spaces. And for me, consumer law and consumer rights could be such an opportunity. Thank you so very much for your attention, and I look forward to your questions.
All right, I usually open the discussion with questions, but we have so many people with better expertise than I do, so